Excited to hear about the Texit story. So go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, go for it, Bobby. Why don't you just give us as much backstory as you feel is appropriate for people to catch your vision.
All right. Well, let's try it like this and see what happens. So backstory is got into precious metals in 2008, about the same time that I figured out that there was something very wrong with the world. Couldn't put my finger on what it was. Watched every documentary I could get my hands on, left side to right side, Inconvenient Truth, Who Killed the Electric Car, Zeitgeist, America, Freedom, Fascism. Like, you probably remember some of these, right? I'm going down every rabbit hole, and I'm trying to figure out what's wrong, because the American dream that they sold us when we were young just wasn't coming to life for me. And, at the bottom of every one of these rabbit holes I went down, I always found the same problem. It was always something about money. And after watching all this stuff, I concluded that we had a money problem. We have a money problem in the U.S. And I tried to figure out who was doing something about it. I mean, it was so obvious to me that this dishonest money from the Federal Reserve was really at the root of all these injustices in the world. And the only thing that I could find back then, 2007, 2008, was this thing called the Liberty Dollar. And the Liberty Dollar was started in 1998 by Bernard von Malthus, and he set out to make his own currency. And I thought that was a great idea. I've got a background in like corporate barter, so I saw it as like a barter currency. And it didn't have any of the drawbacks of a barter currency, where you don't have to pay somebody commission every time you want to trade it. And it was really great. So I said, I'm getting involved with this guy. I meet him. We say hello. A week later, he gets busted by the feds and ends up going to jail for a while for counterfeiting. And I was undeterred, because I thought what he was doing was really great, but I thought he was doing it all wrong. He was making these Liberty Dollar silver coins, but they looked really similar to U.S. currency. They had the word dollars on them, and he was out there spending them at places like Walmart, bragging about it on national television. And I'm like, look, you can make a copy of a $20 bill anytime you want. It's the moment that you try to spend it as current money where you've now broken the counterfeiting law. And I looked at it and I said, look, this is a great idea, but we have to do it different, or we're no better than they are. You can't deceive someone into using honest money, right? You can't get to the truth through some sort of dishonest strategy. And so that's when I created the American Open Currency Standard. And I think it's very coincidental that somewhere on planet Earth in 2008, this Satoshi Nakamoto, maybe not his real name, was also seeing the same problem and was also creating his or their own currency as well. The big difference between me and them was that I went physical and Satoshi, of course, went digital. And so that's where my story began back in 2008. I did very well. I made a lot of coins. Hold on, let me mute out my notifications here because I'm on my phone. I made a lot of coins for causes, political causes. Indian nations were a really big hit for me. The Lakota Nation was one of my first coins. We did 5 different tribes, ending up with the Crow Nation in 2013. So I made a lot of coins, and I had a lot of experience getting people to use these coins as an alternative currency, but it's work. When you're out there trying to get somebody to trade physical copper and silver rounds as money, it's an uphill battle. It works, but it's very slow, and it's slow by design. There's something to be said for money that you have to pass physically from hand to hand. It helps create strong connections and community, community values and all that stuff. But I never saw crypto coming. While I'm on my little gold and silver horse and buggy, this Bitcoin freight train goes flying by. And I never saw it, because when you're in the gold and silver world, you've got the blinders on, right? If you can't hold it, you don't own it. And so, my career was successful. In 2012, I ended up making what is probably the most famous coin in the world today, the original Bitcoin coin, as a commemorative back then. And I made that when Bitcoin was $5. Bitcoin was trading at $5 a coin back when I had the honor of creating the original Bitcoin coin. And this is a cool coin because it gives, this intangible digital thing a physical presence. And I saw it as a bridge between these two worlds of very opposite ends of the value spectrum. And so that was 2012. 2012 was also the same year that I testified in U.S. Congress. So Ron Paul's last domestic monetary policy subcommittee hearing on parallel currencies, the roadmap to monetary freedom. I had an opportunity to come in and be the last person to speak at the very last Ron Paul hearing while he was in Congress. And so that was kind of cool for me back then. Fast forward 2017, crypto's taken off. I'm living in Asia, having the time of my life, raising my family, homeschooling and world schooling them. And I got to see crypto firsthand in Asia. You know, in Asia is where 60% of all crypto trading is done. China, Korea, and Japan are the biggest trading markets for crypto. And so I got to see crypto rich, you know, front and center. I remember sitting on top of the Marina Bay Sands Hotel, you know, this beautiful hotel in Singapore. It's got like this boat suspended across the top of these 3 buildings and the infinity pool. And I'm watching on my phone as Bitcoin passes $20,000 a coin. I go, wow, what a long way it's come from $5 a coin, right? And so I watched that and I said, there's something here. I don't know what it is. I come from a totally different world, but there's something really exciting here that people are really passionate about. And I know I'm going to be a part of it somehow, somewhere, someday. But today I'm still in my gold and silver horse and buggy. And so what I decided was that my contribution to the crypto community was to take this, you know, world famous coin that I've got and turn it into a functional, what I call a cold storage coin. It's a laser etched coin that's got a unique private key on the back of every single coin. And then on top of that private key, we put a tamper evident security seal, looks suspiciously a lot like that. And on that security seal is a public key. And so you can send any amount of crypto now to this physical coin. Now, of course, the crypto is not on the coin, but all the information that you need to unlock that crypto somewhere out there in the blockchain in the cloud is on the coin. So now we've got this like hybrid. We've got this product that's kind of the best of both worlds. You know, crypto is cool, it's fast, it's digital, but we've got problems with people getting hacked. We got passwords forgotten, you know, and crypto is the wild west of money. Like you can't just run down to your local Bank of America or Chase branch and reset your password or like change your PIN code or like get a refund on whatever somebody hacked out of your wallet. And so now you can take a digital asset, embed the information on a coin and lock the coin up in your safe. And so for the first time now, you've got the ability to have a reliable way of keeping crypto safe. And so that was my entry into the crypto community. Besides, you know, making the original commemorative coin, now we've got a functional tool. And I've always approached crypto from that angle. Like, how can we help people get involved safely, easily? Like, you can think of this as my first Bitcoin. You know, there's not much you can do with it. It's not real easy to take the sticker off and retrieve the crypto that's on there, but it's a real easy way of getting started. And it gives you something to hold, something to look at that you can now start to connect the dots in your mind between the world of digital and the world of physical. And so 2017 is when I made my first cold storage coins and made millions of those coins at this point. We've got tens of millions of dollars of crypto stored on those coins for people all over the world. None has ever failed in the history of manufacturing these. And so, you know, it was a long time, even after I made the cold storage coins, where I finally had the whole crypto, I don't know, I'd say like the whole crypto realm makes sense to me. So between like learning about Bitcoin 2011, 2012, and actually getting started by creating my own rocket ship, TexitCoin, you know, you're talking about a dozen years there. And so I remind people when we start this conversation, like if you're coming from the world of precious metals or you don't understand crypto or you don't really trust it, like it takes a while to wrap your mind around it. Like, don't be stressed out if you can't get it overnight. It took me 12 years and I've got an IT background and I've got a gold and silver background and I'm a bit of an expert on money and complementary currency. So this stuff should all make sense to me. But when we've held, you know, tangible money for so long, it takes a while to embrace money that has no physical form, that has no central issuing authority. And it's fantastical. But when you really peel back the layers and you really get into the nuts and bolts of it, as I have done over the last couple of years, getting to the point where we are today, you finally go, man, it's perfect, flawless money. There's something here that mankind needs to pay attention to, because for the first time in like 100 or more years, people now once again have the ability to issue and create and trade their own currency, and we don't need a central authority to do that for us. And that is revolutionary financial technology. And so what I tell people is I say, look, I know it's easy to get lost in crypto. It took me a long time, but think of it as a financial technology first. If you start there, then you'll be able to begin to see the thing that took me a dozen years to understand. And so this has been a journey in honest money for me. And when I got into crypto, I was stuck on the sidelines because of one part, right? When I learned about gold and silver, I learned about, really what money was from a guy named Jason Hummel. And Jason wrote a great article back in like 2006 or something about the fundamental components of money. Money has to be a good medium of exchange. It has to be a good unit of account, and it has to be a good store of value. And if you break that down and you look at it for gold and silver, you go, yeah, it's great. It's great money. That's why it's worked as money for thousands of years. But if you think about it in the realm of crypto, you go, okay, well, medium of exchange, it's kind of perfect. I mean, with crypto, you can send any amount from here to the other side of the world and back in seconds, and you can do it for almost nothing. And you don't have to go through a bank or an issuing authority or a government to get there. I mean, that is a perfect medium of exchange as far as I'm concerned. If you think about crypto as like a unit of account, I think about it like when I made silver coins. In order to make a silver coin, I got to take 1,000-ounce bar of silver, the 75-pound bar. I got to lift it up and put it in my grain machine, and I got to wait for it to turn into little liquid grain, and then it goes into a tub, and I dry it, and then I cast that grain into a long bar, and then I roll the bar into a thin strip, and I punch my blanks out of that strip, and I got to rim them and burnish them and anneal them, and then finally, after like a day's work, I get to stamp those things. It's a lot of work to take 1,000-ounce bar and turn it into 1,000 1-ounce rounds. It's a day's work for a small team. With crypto, I could take a Bitcoin and I can smash it into 1,000 little pieces almost instantaneously, almost for free. And the best part about it is you don't have to worry about counterfeiting. If I came to your desk and I dropped a silver coin down, like, could you look at that and definitively tell me that that was real? Like, okay, if you're in the silver business, you might know the weight and the sound of a silver coin, but unless you've got metallurgical equipment there or an x-ray, you can't really know for sure that it's real. You can't make a counterfeit Bitcoin. You can't make a fake Texit coin. You can make a copy of it, but if you try to send fake Bitcoin into the Bitcoin network, it'll never get there. The Bitcoin network knows every coin that it's ever made and every tiny fractional derivative thereof. You can't make a fake Bitcoin. And so as far as a unit of account is concerned, it's flawless. So we're 2 for 3, right? Pretty good money. But what about the question of store of value? And this was a real question back in like 2012 when I first heard about it, because we've got this Bitcoin yo-yo. It's up to $100, it's down to $3. It's all over the place. And I said, well, anything that's going to be good money has to be a good store of value. And if I accept it today at $100 and I go to spend it tomorrow at $80, that's not a real great store of value. And I misunderstood for a very long time that store of value doesn't necessarily mean tangible. It also doesn't mean that it's not volatile. When I first got into silver in 2008, I bought my first 100 ounces of silver for $23 an ounce. And then I watched the price of silver go all the way down to $8 an ounce. That's a huge drop for any investment class. That's a big drop. And so, we can have volatility in all kinds of different markets. But what I really misunderstood was that store of value doesn't mean that it's not volatile. It just means that you can use it to trade for something later that's valuable. Like, you can't eat your silver coins, right? You can't put an ounce of gold in your tank for gas. You got to monetize those things at like a coin shop or a pawn shop before you can actually spend the money and get something that you want. All those things are designed to do is hold on to that value so that you can spend it later. And that's what a good store of value does. And so while I'm here with the blinders on the gold and silver horse and buggy, that freight train that went by ended up like accomplishing the holy grail of what we always wanted to do in the precious metals business, which is link in with Visa, MasterCard. And so now today you can get a Coinbase Visa card that's backed up by your crypto holdings, and you can tap to pay at 54 million businesses all over the planet. Why? Because they're able to link in with the card service network so that you can spend your crypto anywhere you want. And I missed it. I missed it because I was so set in my ways with the idea of a tangible form of wealth. And I never stopped to consider the fact that the whole world is just going digital. Even money before crypto. You got credit cards, debit cards, you got electronic money today as it is. And so, when I put all those pieces together and I said, okay, the world's not making any new gold and silver coin buyers. The writing's on the wall. I've got to engage this concept or I'm going to miss it. I'm going to go the way of like the fax machine. I'm going to be selling silver coins like in like novelty shops or something. And, my daughter, she's 19, her whole world is on her phone. And she can't take a silver coin and like put it into her phone. If you're going to play around in the metaverse, you need digital stuff. And kids today are concerned about in-game currencies and NFTs and digital collectibles and all kinds of stuff, but it's not physical. Like my daughter's never going to go out and buy a safe where she can stockpile the gold and silver coins that she goes out and buys. Like the only coins she's going to ever have are the ones she inherits from me when I go, right? And so if we're going to be successful in this mission of honest money, we got to use the tools of our time. We have to use tools that are convenient and accessible. And, it took me a long time to admit that just might not be gold and silver. I'm not saying that gold and silver aren't valuable. I think that they're extremely valuable. I'm not selling my collection, but I'm saying that when it comes to money, I can't pay my vendors in Ukraine or Serbia or India or in Singapore with gold and silver coins. I use crypto to do that. It's just fast, borderless, perfect, flawless money. And, like I said, I encourage anybody that's new to this conversation to look at crypto first as a financial technology that allows individuals to trade with each other, something that the market has determined to be valuable without having to go through a bank, without the worry of counterfeiting, without having to ship it and insure it and do all the stuff that we would normally have to do with some of the other forms of alternative currency that are out there. And so once that all hit me like a ton of bricks, I said, I know what I got to do. And the most interesting thing about it when that moment came was how deeply I realized I was at the right place at the right time. I had just come back from Asia, 7 years of experience understanding the Asian culture. That's a big thing for crypto. I just built a building that's got huge power, that's exactly what you need to mine crypto. I've got a perfectly insulated building that, you don't have to worry about heat and all those things down here in Texas. That's something you need to get involved in crypto. I've got this background in IT. I've got this background in coins and currency. I've made, the original Bitcoin coin. I'm like, I've got a lot of credibility in this space. Let's see if I can take it out for a spin and do the impossible, which is start my own cryptocurrency. And when you look at it, at face value, it's like, 1,000 people a day do that. Get in line. Like, who are you? What makes you special? And then you, like I said, you look a little deeper and you go, okay, well, apparently this guy's got some experience in alternative currency and he's got some experience in the cryptocurrency space and he's made a valuable tool that the industry uses to keep crypto safe offline where it can't get hacked and won't go out of business. And so you put all those pieces together and you go, hey, this is kind of my party. I just didn't show up until like way late. But at the same time, I've got all this experience now of looking at all these projects that came before us that failed. It's really powerful to be able to learn from all of those mistakes. And, so people say like, well, aren't you afraid? It's like, well, no, I know what all those guys did wrong. We can learn from those lessons. We can read the indictments. We can read through the court transcripts and find out what they did that was wrong. And we can do it better. We can do it the right way. Still risky, still there's an inherent risk in everything that we do, but we only have to do a couple basic things to be drastically successful and totally different than anybody else that's come before us that maybe didn't have the authenticity that we have or the experience that we have, or just the many and numerous lessons that we've learned from. Like, if you go first, you have to learn the hard way. So we get to come in now a little bit late and create this second chance for the cryptocurrency industry to engage if they want, which they have, and run with, which is what we've done. And I think that's why we've been so successful today. So that's the longer version of how we got from 2008 manufacturing gold, silver, copper coins by the millions to, hey, wait a minute, I'm getting completely out of coin manufacturing, sold all of my production equipment, and went all in, literally sold the farm and went all in on TexitCoin. It's incredibly coincidental as well that I'm here in Texas. Texas is, a land of abundant energy, and cryptocurrency mining is all about energy. With cryptocurrency, instead of taking that 1,000-ounce bar of silver, we're taking electricity as our raw material. We're putting it through a production process that we use these things called ASICs to do. And at the end of every, production day, we get a handful of digital coins as the reward. So it's a very similar parallel to what I'm experienced with. And that's another thing as well, coming from industrial factories and manufacturing, like, I'm not scared away by things like 3-phase power and 480 volt, this, that, and the other thing, like heat exchangers and pumps and tanks and immersion cooling. Like, this is all very natural for me as well. And so, like I said, when I looked around, I said, this is kind of built for me. I'm the right guy to do this. It was an easy fit once I finally took the blinders off and said, let's think about money as we go into the digital future. What's the best money that's out there? Crypto is pretty cool, but it lacks a leader. It lacks somebody that has a commitment to honest money. And so what has happened with that void is it created an opportunity for the big banks and foreign nations to come in, buy up all the coins, become the biggest holders of this stuff. And, it made a lot of people rich, which I'm sure is great for them. But it's caused us as a cryptocurrency community to largely lose our way. And so that's where I think, I'm meant to step in, bring crypto back to what it was originally supposed to be: digital, decentralized, peer-to-peer currency for people, by people, based specifically here in Texas.
Wow.
Love it. So let's talk about where you are now. So now you went.
Hold on real quick, Terry. Hold on. Can you hear us good, Bobby?
You're very quiet. I'm going to try switching over to headphones if you guys don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and tell me.
Let me know what this sounds like, and maybe I can hear you better.
Okay, we'll test. We'll keep talking till you
hear us all right
tell
now,
us
Bob?
you can hear us. Can you hear us?
Connected, but I can't hear you through the headphones yet. We're just going to keep going.
Check. Okay, but you can hear us like this if we talk?
I got you, just like this.
Okay.
Very quiet, but I'm just going to keep going.
All right, go ahead, Terry.
So let's talk about where you are right now, Bobby. You decided to go proof of work instead of proof of stake. And I know we talked about that recently, but I think it's important for people to hear why you went that route, because there's a lot less friction, going a different way. So talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah. So the first thing is, I always tend to do things the hard way. Proof of stake is easy. Click, click, click. Building a layer 2 is easy. It's something you can launch with almost no work. And that's what happens, hundreds or thousands of times a day. And so the challenge that I see with that is control. And if you look at the majority of the miners that control the proof of work coins, you're looking at China. If you're looking at the majority of holders for proof of stake coins, you're looking at Asia. You're looking at exchanges like Binance that are the largest holders of most of these coins. So whether you go proof of work or proof of stake, if you don't start over and do it yourself, then you're looking at really having Asia primarily in control of those assets, whether they're physical assets like mining hardware or the digital coins for proof of stake. So first and foremost, I decided we had to start over, right? I looked at all the options that were out there. I could throw my hat in any of these rings. I know some of these guys that started some of these bigger coins. And I said, we really need like a made in USA version of this thing. We've got plenty of power in Texas. Let's start there. And let's do it the real way, because the proof of work concept gives us something physical that we can fall back on as our backbone. And I've always been a big fan of physical, obviously come from the world of precious metals. But if we do proof of work, now we've got something to point at and something to build, something to rally around. And I really like that idea. When we looked at accessibility of hardware and accessibility of energy resources, proof of work just made sense. To me, proof of work's the better, more honest way to go. And that's why we started with the POW. As far as technology was concerned, I've always been a big fan of Litecoin. Charlie Lee is actually a customer of ours on our coin business. So I've liked that technology. We took Litecoin, we didn't fork it, we cloned it, which means we started with a blank slate, no pre-mine, no advantage for us, and we got started mining it right here in Texas. So proof of work that's the one that I like, and it just means real. You've got something real that begins to give the coin its initial value. And I looked at all the proof of work coins that were out there, and I said, look, there seems to be a connection. It's not always perfect, and sometimes one leads the other, but there's definitely a connection out there with the proof of work coins between the size of the mine and the value of the coin. And so as I evaluated what would have to be done and how much would have to be invested to create a top 100 crypto, a crypto that's somewhere on the list of globally respected coins, we're either going to have to throw a couple $1,000,000 at like promoters and influencers and pump and dumps, or we're going to have to build a mine. And we didn't have the ability to build the mine. I didn't have the money for that either. But I decided that that's the program that we could do, specifically because I had seen it done successfully so many times in the past. A buddy of mine started and ran a company called Bit Club Network back from 2014 to 2018. And I don't know about you, but I would largely give Bit Club Network and BitConnect credit for putting Bitcoin on the map in the first place. These are guys that are going door to door, knocking on doors, talking to people and inviting them to join them and mine crypto and, or trade crypto on the BitConnect side. And so, I think that there's a lot of power, not just in building the mine, but also in building the community. And that's where I settled on, okay, we're doing proof of work, we're doing mining, and we're going to build it the same way these guys have done it in the past, which was quite successful. We're just going to do it a little bit different. And the big difference between what TexitCoin does and what every other coin that has come before this tried to do this is we're not mining Bitcoin. And that's such a huge thing because it's very difficult to profitably mine Bitcoin. As far as TexitCoin, it's really easy because we're only competing against each other. The difference is that instead of having to work hard to outmine China and the big banks and the foreign nations, we've got to work hard to create interest and value in TexitCoin as a digital asset. And if we're able to successfully do that, then we can build a top 100 coin and well beyond.
That's awesome.
I love it. So you've got the mine and we verified this. We have personal friends who've gone, for those listening, because, we've all seen scams out there and we don't want any involvement with that. So I love that you're actually physically doing it, which is so cool. And
let me stop you for a second and just say that we've got some ways to go, but we're off to a good start and we know what the pieces are. So the first chart on the website, the dashboard that shows you how we're doing, we've got a whole page full of graphs and data, and it's all updated real time. The first chart on that page shows you the mine power, and there are two values on there. There's a current power that the mine is actually running at, and it's all over the place. It could be as high as 480 gigahash. It could be low as 300. I've seen it. So there's a lot that goes into why the power jumps up and down. Sometimes it's based on what's driving us from the Litecoin network, and sometimes it's based on just how the machines are performing and how many blocks they're hitting.
Can you see that?
But the point is that chart right there that you're looking at shows you two things. It shows our current hash power, which is live, and then it also shows you with more of a straight line the sold hash power. And so there's a disparity today between the sold hash power and the current hash power. And that's there because the mine is working to catch up with what we've actually sold. So there are three steps that go into actually building the mine. And this is why I wanted to stop you. The first one is correctly allocating the capital for the mine growth. And so at the end of every week, and maybe you saw it in the Telegram chat group recently, at the end of every week, what we do is we say, okay, how much hash power was sold or earned through our mining program? Okay, I think it was 106,000 mega hash this past week. Okay, well, the L9s that we buy from Bitmain, the top of the line equipment, runs at 16,500 mega hash. So we need to buy 7 of these machines this week to cover all the hash power that we've sold. Okay, so step 1 in following through and actually doing the job is allocating the cash, purchasing from the vendor, and paying the vendor. Done. And it's so easy not just to do it, but it's so easy to prove it. Here's the invoice. Here's the payment receipt. Here's the blockchain hash transaction of us allocating the capital. Great. We're off to a good start. But the job's not done. Job number 2 is actually getting them. And that was really hard. And this is probably the primary reason why we're behind right now, is because when the new administration got elected and the value of crypto took off, all the hardware costs like doubled and tripled. I'm like, oh, great timing, right? Do we go back and modify our prices, or do we buy futures and wait? Because we're not competing against China, I don't really need to pay top dollar to have the equipment right now. What I need is to allocate the capital, set that aside so that as the prices come back down, or if we're willing to wait, we don't have to change our prices. So that's what we did. We bought futures. Okay, well, the industry's calming down, production's catching up, and now we're able to actually take physical delivery of the equipment. We canceled out some of the future contracts, took physical delivery. We were trying to buy L7s, and now we bought L9s instead. So we've got it all today. That's the second part, actually physically getting it. And if you want to take a ride out to McKinney and come visit mine site number 1 at the farm, you'll see a couple things. One, we've got a tank full of L7s, which is where we started. Second, we've got a tank of L9s, a B24 immersion cooling system, right? They're all there. They're all running. It's filled all the way to the brim. And then next to it, we've got an additional, just counted them, 46 L9s that are sitting there ready to get plugged in to either the B24 immersion cooling tank that's sitting outside of the garage, or we've got a B48, which holds 48 ASICs and a double stack on order, right? So we've got all the immersion cooling capacity right now to hold 24 ASICs. We've got another 24 ASIC cooling capacity that's sitting in front of the garage waiting to get installed, and that's a bit of a dramatic story. And then we've got another one, a double stack, that holds 48 more that's in transit right now from our vendor. And so we have the ability to install, once that last piece of equipment gets here, up to 96 ASICs. But we've also purchased and paid for what they call the BC40, which is a full container. It's a 40-foot, fully integrated turnkey container that holds 200 ASICs. The heat exchangers all get installed on top. It's beautiful. It uses a full megawatt of power. We've got the land getting set up right now for that down in Victoria, Texas. And so we'll have the ability to keep 296 ASICs cool and install them once the dust settles on all that. So that's part 3. Part 3 is actually getting them set up and installed. And it's not an impossible task. It's just a lot of work, and there's a lot that goes into it. So that's the third step. So buying them and paying for them is 1, getting them and having them is 2, and then installing them so that you look at the chart on the website and you say, oh, okay, we've sold this much, and our hash power is actually running above that. And those are real easy things to prove once the job is complete. So the job is not done, but I can look you in the eye. I can tell you that we've bought and paid for more than the hash power that we've actually sold. We physically have in hand the ASICs for more than the hash power we've sold, and we are in the process of getting those all set up so that when you look at that first chart on the website, our current hash power is above our sold hash power. And that's job number 1. What we're doing is we're building a mine. And it's really easy to show you that we're in the process of building it. You're able to very quickly verify that that hash power is there, assuming we're being honest with that hash power chart, which of course is live. But again, it's not done, but it is a good work in progress. And that's the part where you guys are supposed to watch my back and hold me accountable. You know, check in from time to time. Where are we at? How's the land? Did we get it set up? Why are we still at 450? Like, what are we doing? So there's a couple steps that go into actually building the mine, but it is there. It is real. And, you know, for a long time, I said, like, I don't know why it's so hard. These guys that have done it before, they never built the mine. It's very strange. Why didn't you do it? Well, it's a lot of work. It's not easy. And when you're mining Bitcoin and you realize you're losing $2 a day on every computer you plug in, eventually you go, I don't know why we even bother plugging them in. People feel comfortable joining us and giving us the money, and we never have to plug anything in. That sounds like a much easier way to go, right? And so I can see how those things end in disaster And I can also see how easy it is to avoid the same fate. But it's little things that spiral out of control, and you go, man, guess I should have done it the right way the whole time. For our project, that's what we've got. We started out the hard way, proof of work. We started out the harder way, going to people and say, look, we don't have a mine today. Here's our mine. It's this little box. It's making a lot of noise. It's generating a lot of heat. Like it's all we got. But if we think we can do it and enough people are willing to take that risk and journey with us, then it comes together. Today, we're at 1.4% of the way towards the goal. Tiny, laughable still. But when you look at other charts on the website and you see how fast we're growing, you go, maybe there is something there. Maybe I'll take the chance along with these guys. And so building the mine is job number one. It's very important that we do it. It's very important that we own where we are with it, both in terms of like how much we've actually sold, which is this teeny tiny amount, and the fact that we haven't installed all the stuff that we've gotten. I'm not trying to call you out on it. I'm trying to make sure that you guys know to call me out on it, because it's the most important thing that we have to do to be successful. Just follow through on what we say we're going to do. And it's easier said than done, but it is important to follow through. It's critical for our success. And I just want to correct you there to make sure you understand exactly where we are today. Because that first chart on the website tells that story. And if you don't understand why those two lines are there and they're not exactly the same, then it needs an explanation.
We'll have to have you make a short video on that for sure.
I love that you're transparent as hell all along the way. I love it. It's almost unmatched, unfound anywhere else. And I know that we're not but it is a live layer one blockchain. It's not a someday project. It's just an in-process project.
Correct.
And I love that. And you talked about how you feel like the value is commensurate with the size of the mine growing itself. And I've also seen, we had this chat last week where you feel like the price charts, you've got this steady growth curve that you talk about, that you believe month over month of where we're getting to. Can you help people understand like how you derive that? Because some people snicker when they say that, like, yeah, this guy can predict the price, a year out, and as if that's going to happen and as if he's in any control of it. So just maybe talk us through some of how that gets derived and how you see it and how you plan on it, working the plan.
Yeah, sure. So I think you're talking about kind of two different things there. Let me see if I can break them down and address them both. The first one is the correlation between size of mine and value of coin. And so that's what I looked at with proof of work coins. And you can go into like CoinMarketCap and you can get a list on CoinMarketCap of proof of work coins, and you can see that data. You'd have to go back and extrapolate some of the, the mining data from another site. But if you put the mining data on top of the price data, you'll see again that there's a very strong correlation between those two things. And the reason for that is because the bigger the mine is, the more reliable the network is. Think about it in terms of like a traditional bank mainframe. You've got a giant supercomputer. It's in some big glass building somewhere, and like a girl has to go through the red laser beams if she wants to break into that and like steal some money out of the Bank of Internet. I don't know. It's a movie. Anyway, so that's the traditional central authority model. You've got a big mainframe, right? And it's keeping track of all the balances and all the transactions and the credit histories and all that stuff. So with crypto, we don't have that. We've eliminated that central authority. We've gone decentralized. It's the opposite. And so what we have instead are these nodes that are all over planet Earth, or all over the state of Texas in our example. And the more of those you have, the more mining power you have, the more reliable the network is, the more redundant it is, the more likely people are going to build on it. Why does building matter? Because if somebody builds on your network, they're saying, hey, I like this. Either it's a ideological parallel, or it's made in America thing, or I like something about this network. I'm going to build my app or my dApp on top of this network. Well, in order for them to communicate with the network, they have to pay transaction fees. And the transaction fees aren't huge, but still you're paying something to use that network. And so the larger the network is, the more secure and reliable and redundant the network is, the more people will build on top of that network, and the more transaction fees are going to be incurred by and for the miners, right? The guys that are out there building it, paying those electricity bills. And so we want to have this big network. And as the network gets bigger and more people build on it, and you start seeing powered by TXC or powered by TexitCoin on more apps and dApps, now there's more interest in it. People have to go out in there and they have to buy TXC to pay the network fees to communicate on the network. So it becomes like this self-reinforcing cycle where the bigger the network is, the more valuable the native currency becomes for that network, if that makes any sense. That's one path for us to get to where we want to go. Eventually we'll make another video that I'd like to call Checkmate. We have this thing locked down from so many different angles. And the second part of the answer to your question is a different angle. And that's the growth of our community, right? And so if you ask 100 people in crypto, what is it that gives cryptocurrency its value? Most of the time you're going to hear scarcity. It's scarce. There's only a limited supply. There's only so many of them left to mine. The scarcity principle is what drives the most of the understanding in cryptocurrency about why the currency is valuable. And I come at it from a completely different perspective because I'm looking at it not as a scarce resource, but as a usable functional currency. And I don't remember if it's Metcalfe's principle, Metcalfe's something or another.
Yeah.
Metcalfe's law that was just explained to me on the car ride over here today about how the size of the community is actually what gives TexitCoin its value. And so what I say is, look, we could use this pencil as a currency inside of our community. As long as we all agree that this pencil is our currency and we all put a set value on it. Let's call this pencil a 2.8 cent pencil. And we're going to trade it between the three of us. And then all of a sudden our community gets larger. Now we got 100 people here. Well, let's call it a 10-cent pencil now. How's that sound? Well, why? Well, because our community is larger and the value that we can obtain with this currency is bigger and better. Now there's more people, more production, more traders, more options, more opportunities. And so it makes sense that our currency increases in value as the quality of our network goes up. Well, what's it worth at 1,000 people? Could we call it like a 25-cent pencil? And so what I developed was a little stair-step chart, and I published it. It's not anything private. But I said, look, if our community is this big and we've got this much cash resource, then it would make sense that our currency is this big. Now it's a theory. It's not anything other than a theory. Because what happens is I go, okay, the community hit that point, or our cash reserve hit that point, or we hit that point on the calendar. Let's push the price up. And then we step back and then we watch. And the market comes in and they say, well, I think that the price is too high, and the price gets pushed down. Or the market comes in and says, I think the price is low, and the price gets pushed up. So we push the market to a particular level, and then we step back to see if the market is willing to engage it at that price. And so the chart that I published is this stair-step strategy that says, if our community is this big, if our cash reserves are this big, then I think that we can support our price at this set level. Whatever it is, it's 25 cents, it's 35 cents, it's 55 cents, 75 cents, whatever it is, it's a theory. Now, the interesting thing about the theory is that the cash reserve, based on the total number of coins in circulation, puts that at about a 10% liquidity requirement for us to support the price. And so the concept is very similar in that regard, like fractional banking. If you put $100 on deposit, how many people are actually going to cash out at any one point in time? Well, maybe 10%. Okay. So if we've got a cash reserve of about 10% of our total market cap, then is it possible that we've got enough money so that anybody, anytime, can come into TexitCoin or leave TexitCoin, and there's more than enough cash there to support those ins and outs without lowering the price below that floor that we set? And that's the theory. That's the estimate chart that I've worked out. And I think the answer so far has been very much yes. I think that those are very fair and very stable values. But what's happening along that as well is that our network produces about 95,000 coins a day, right? Every day. It doesn't matter if we've got one miner or 10,000 miners. The network always produces about the same number of coins. And so as more people enter the rocket ship and as our community gets larger, the mine gets more and more fragmented. And so what happens over time is kind of the opposite of a pump and dump. People say, well, it's going to be a pump and dump. It's going to be a rug pull. What happens is as we get bigger, as more people join our community and those coins that get paid out every day go into more and more and more wallets, we become more fragmented. And so it becomes more difficult for any one person to have enough coins to push the price below what we have set as far as a target price at any one point in time. In fact, today, I'd say that there are probably only 2 or 3 people, myself being one of them, that have the ability to push the price below the market value that we have estimated to be worth today, if that makes any sense. And so as time goes by and our community gets larger, we're hoping that number goes from, 3 to 2 to 1, and then sooner or later to the point where there's not a single person that could cash out their entire wallet and disrupt the price unnaturally below our target market value, if that makes any sense. And so we've got that stair-step chart that takes us all the way up to $16. If our community is this big, we're at $1. If it's this big, we're at $2. This big, we're at 5, 10, all the way up to 16. And so when I say that I can look you in the eye and I can tell you that I know we're going to $16 by February of next year, that's really only based on one assumption. And that assumption is based on our continued growth. If we continue growing, if the seats continue to fill up on the rocket ship and our cash reserves continue to grow the way that they are, then there will be no problem with us whatsoever maintaining the liquidity that we need in order for this thing to in a very organized fashion go all the way up to $16. However, that's assuming that this TexitCoin thing lid hasn't popped. Because here's the problem. The problem is as soon as the world figures out that we're actually serious about what we're doing and we're actually following through on what we're doing, the price will go to 16 and beyond. It's like a company's futures projection, right? As soon as the street thinks you're actually going to hit your target, then the information that would drive the price in one direction or another, gets factored into the marketplace. And so I'm highly confident that we're going to 16 by February of next year. The price today at 55 or 65 cents, whatever it is, it really only tells me one thing, and that's we haven't popped yet. The world still doesn't know about us. And I like that. Everyone else is looking at it and saying, come on, man, win Lambo, win Lambo. Like, trust me, you really want to be patient because we're all getting the slow drip off the mine. And so every day you get a couple more coins and then you bring on some people, you help fill up the seats on the rocket ship and you get some more coins and you get more hash power and more coins. Like if the price pops tomorrow to $200 and we have 100,000 people sign up for mining the next day, all of a sudden that, 7, 8, 9, 10 coins per day becomes, much smaller. You're getting less than 1 TexitCoin per day. And so, that day is going to come, but we want that day to come slowly if we can. And so, so it's a double-edged sword. We want that day to come where we wake up and rub the sleep out of our eyes and look at our wallet and go, and we fall out of bed. But at the same time, like as long as we can hold on to some organized stair-step strategy on our way up to 16, I think it'll really be better, at least for the early adopters like us. For the people that are helping really build this thing at the ground floor, we'd like to have it wait a while so we can stockpile those coins, so that we can fill up the seats with friends and family. Because once the day comes when it pops, it's not as much in our control to influence anymore.
When the genie's out of the bottle. You used the term checkmate earlier. I loved it, and you had some great discussions last week. But you didn't come here to be, coin market cap number 198. Where's your real plans? Where do you really want to take this? Where do you see it being a likelihood of or potential to get to?
I think a fair place for us based on the reality of our project, the leadership, the mission. I think top 20 is like a very feasible spot for us to occupy. If you look at the top 100 and you say, 10% of them are straight up jokes. And then you start, eliminating others from the list that are kind of goofy or redundant or nonsensical or, have already had their time in the spotlight. Like, I think it's actually a very achievable thing for us to be in the top 20. My computer is dead, so I can't pull up exactly what top 20 would mean for us in terms of market value. But I'm thinking that would probably put us somewhere around the $8, $9, $10 billion value. I think that at any point I could have a sane conversation with anybody about why Texitcoin deserves to be a top 20 crypto without anyone really like questioning it. I think that's realistic. Now, as far as fantastical belief and projection after that, when I first started this thing, I was trying to model Litecoin, obviously, because we're a Litecoin clone. And I said, look, if we can build this thing to about 1/10 the size of the Litecoin network, I think it stands to reason that we're about 1/10 the value of Litecoin. And so that's kind of where we got to our $1 billion value target. It was sometime later that I discovered that Litecoin and Doge actually share the same network backbone. The same mining infrastructure is used for both Litecoin and Doge, which to me was kind of like mind-blowing, first of all. And that's also the same time that I discovered merge mining, which is what we're doing now. And so when I realized that we're as good as Litecoin and Doge combined, I said, hey, if we're going to be 1/10 the size of Litecoin and now Litecoin Doge, doesn't it stand to reason that we could be 1/10 the value of both of them combined? And again, computers did, so I can't tell you exactly where that is, but it's much, much larger. But there was like a little asterisk on the end of my theory. And the asterisk was based on the fact that we're a permission blockchain. Not anybody in the world can just fire up their computer and start mining TexitCoin. And so that gives us a little bit of limitation in the realm of mining. And so I set out and I said, is there any coin in the top 100 that the crypto industry takes seriously, finds valuable, takes seriously, but is a private coin? You know, not mineable, like not really like a public blockchain. And imagine my surprise to find that XRP, Ripple, is a private coin. It's not even mined. It's 100% pre-mined. And I'm like, does anybody know this? I mean, this kind of resembles the CBDC that they warned us that they were going to kill. Now, you know, we go out to these gun shows and people walk by and, hey, are you into crypto? Yeah, I got some. Oh, which ones do you have? Ripple, got XRP. Why does everybody have XRP all of a sudden? This is so weird. It's not even a real crypto. And I said, man, this is really great news, because I thought that there weren't going to be any coins that were taken seriously if they're permissioned. And now I'm looking at it and saying, we've got the best of both worlds. We've got a profitable mining program, and we've got a private coin that can't be outmined by China. And we've got great leadership. We've got a great mission. So now we've got the best of Litecoin, Doge, and XRP. So why couldn't we be as valuable as all three of those combined? That puts us at number 3. You know, that puts us right behind Ethereum and or Tether, you know, right up there in the top 5. Ripple being number 4 or 5, whatever it is. And, you know, when I realized that, and I said, we got all of those great elements combined in TexitCoin. What a rare thing. When I started looking at it and saying, well, why not number 1? You know, if we could get to the top 5, why couldn't we challenge Bitcoin's digital gold status? You know, it's the OG, it's the first to market, it's got a big head start. Even if we were at number 5, Bitcoin would still be 20 times larger, you know? So that's not a bad spot to be, but there's nobody at the helm for Bitcoin. It's run by the banks. You know, how can you get excited about something that's run by banks? You know, we've got a community-driven project now. I've never seen the enthusiasm, the creativity, the participation across, you know, different teams of the organization. Like I haven't seen this since Bitcoin. We've got that thing that Bitcoin had today. And so number 1 might be a far ways off, but that's the target. And again, you know, I get there, I can show you the math. You know, the math all makes sense, but when you start going past number 20, it starts feeling a little fantastical. Like, all right, is that real? Could I really get this coin to $10,000 a coin? Because then I'm worth like $2 trillion. That's a lot. So again, number 1 is obviously, I think, a realistic goal. I think top 5 is a very realistic goal. And I think that if the market correctly values us, not based on the size of the mine today, but based on the mission and the fact that we know where we're going and we know how to get there, as soon as that realization is accepted by the market, we'll be a top 20 coin.
Bobby, last week, you talked about a lot of really interesting things. One is we've talked all about the phase 1 stuff. I think people really need to hear about your phase 2, this idea of getting the currency its actual utility, people using it. That downtown model that you talked about is fantastic. And then also the idea that you are building up a war chest of money to become omnipresent. You know, you picked Texit for a reason, so you could point your marketing dollars at a target audience, which I thought was brilliant. But you know, you've got a lot of ideas beyond that, so maybe you can start sharing some of those things.
Well, there's a lot to unwrap in there. So let's start with phases. We got two different phase conversations. The first is the mining phase, and then the second is the utility phase, as most people call it. You didn't necessarily ask about the mining, but let's go through it real quick just so people understand the mining strategy. So when we set out to build the mine, we asked the top experts, like, how big of a mine do we need to have for the world to take us seriously? And they got out their pencils and calculators. And this was at the World Digital Mining Summit last year in Las Vegas. I'm actually speaking at the World Digital Mining Summit this year. Hopefully you guys are going. And they got out their calculators and they did the figures and they said 35 megawatts. 35 megawatts is what you need to have in order for the world to look at you and go, yeah, that's a good mine. That's a big mine. And I did the math on it and I said 100 million megahash. It's kind of exactly what I was shooting for, right? I think 100 million megahash with the new machines is like 33 megawatts. So 33, 35, like somewhere in that range. And so to get there, we're building the mine in three phases. Phase one is where we are today, which is a couple little micro sites scattered across DFW. Okay, so we've got mine site number 1 in McKinney, mine site number 2 and number 3 will be somewhere in or around the DFW Metroplex. Strategy number 2, phase 2, is what we call in-home miners. And we reached out to Bitmain in the very beginning, the big company that makes the biggest, mining hardware. And we tried to get them to design an ASIC for us that runs at 300 megahash. And that's still in process, but we couldn't get the price point then. Maybe it's a little bit better today. We couldn't get the price point exactly where we wanted. And so we've been playing around with different equipment to see exactly what the right combination is so that we can have like 10 to 100,000 nodes distributed across homes in the state of Texas at the right price point. And so that's phase 2. And we're getting started with that now. We've got 3 pallets of home ASICs on order. We're looking at the people in the mining community and figuring out who's in Texas that's got enough hash power to take home a mine. So that's phase 2 of mining. And then phase 3 of mining is the giant shipping containers. We've got our first one on order. The BC40 should be here in early June. That goes to Victoria. And then we'll have like another 30 to 35 of those scattered across the state of Texas. So we've got 35 big sites. We've got a couple of medium sites. And then we've got tens of thousands of small sites and homes across the state. So that's the mining strategy phases, which is not what you asked about. But I figured I'd throw that in there just so we had that as well. As far as the rollout of our utility. And this is a really big thing because you're going to come across it a lot as you're communicating with cryptocurrency enthusiasts. Anyone that's been around crypto for more than 5 minutes learns a couple of the buzzwords. One of them is ecosystem. One of them is DeFi. One of them is utility. And they all want to know what your utility is. What are you doing? What's it going to do? Is it going to like secure medical records on the blockchain? Or is it like designed for like voting fraud? Or is it like, what's your specific crypto going to do? And it's important to understand that this topic of utility sprang up in like 2016, 2017, 2018, when the world figured out that you can do a lot of stuff with blockchain technology. In fact, one of the things that we've developed is this software called Bevis, Bevis, back in 2017, 2018, as we were producing the cold storage coins, because people ask questions like, how do I know that this coin is real? How do I know that you didn't keep a copy of the private key? How do you know that you adhered to any kind of good manufacturing practices? And I said, well, I really can't prove it to you, but I can take a copy of my production log and write down who was in the room and how many coins we made and what day of the week it was, and I can stamp it with my company seal and I can sign it. And I can publish that information to the blockchain so that you've got an immutable, uneditable, decentralized, permanent record of the production the day that coin was made. And I can't give you much more than that, but it's a lot more than anybody else is going to give you. So BEVIS means blockchain-enabled verification and information service. And so if you scan the code on any one of the back of the coins we made, you get some information. Where it was made, who made it, who uploaded it. And so that's a utility, right? We didn't have to develop our own coin and our own blockchain to create that utility. We built that one originally supported by the Ethereum, and then we switched over to the Bitcoin Cash network because it was faster and cheaper to use. Anyway, the point of all this is that what the industry forgot as they found all these fun other uses for blockchain technology is that use case number one, utility number one, is money. And it's not surprising that they kind of forgot that, because there are very few people in crypto that understand the money conversation. I understand the money conversation. I was there in the early days. I testified in Congress about alternative currencies. So these guys see blockchain technology as like this bigger picture. I'm looking at it and saying, guys, you're missing out on the biggest industry in the world, money. Everyone uses it. We all need it. We trade every day. And so instead of us trying to get some fancy use case for TexitCoin, why don't we just focus on the one that everyone else forgot, which is currency? And so our utility is currency. Now, that's a tough nut as well, even with TexitCoin and the leadership, because like we talked about before, anything that's going to be used as money has to have a stable value. And it's certainly nice that TexitCoin seems to be stair-stepping its way up to $16, but what happens if it goes the other direction? You know, we actually saw a flash pop. I don't remember when it was. I think it was like February, up to $59 a coin. $59, our all-time high. And that is because of something else that most people don't understand, which is we don't have enough sellers today of TexitCoin. You can go into a market like Bitmart or DexTrade right now, where TexitCoin is traded, and you can see how much selling resistance there is at different levels. So you could say, well, what would happen right now if I wanted to buy $10,000 worth of TexitCoin? Well, you wouldn't get 55 cents, that's for sure. And you wouldn't get 56. You'd probably pay an average of like 75 cents for TexitCoin, because there aren't enough sellers to resist that purchase, and it would drive the price all the way up. So when the price of TexitCoin jumped, I think at the end of February, and it busted through like the 35 cent threshold, there weren't any sellers up there to stop it from running all the way up to $56. And people made a lot of money that day. That was a fun day for some people that actually were paying attention and caught it, because there wasn't enough selling activity on the market. Anyway, long story short is, even though that's fun, if the market jumps and then crashes and you're a baker and you get paid for your, rolls at $56 and then TexitCoin crashes back down the next day to 47 cents, you're going to be pretty pissed, and rightfully so. And so to deal with that, what we're in the process of doing right now is developing our own technology to, for the very first time, allow people to build layer 2 on top of the TexitCoin blockchain. And the first layer 2 that we're building is a community currency. It'll be specifically for the city of McKinney. We're in the process of replacing their downtown dollars with what we call downtown digital dollars. And they asked us to. They said, we've got this community currency right now. It's called downtown dollars. Nobody uses it. How would you feel about making an alternative that's better, faster, easier? We said, yeah, that's exactly what we want. That's like, you're speaking our language. And so ultimately what we need to do is prove out that our system works, and then we'll have access to their fairs and festivals. And that's the prize. And so we got to prove that it works first, and that's okay. I understand the concern about having 100,000 people coming into downtown, and then all of a sudden your payment system doesn't work and nobody's buying turkey legs or waffle cones and funnel cakes. So we want to make sure we got it working perfectly before we even try to do that. But the point is that we'll build a stable coin on top of the TXE blockchain, and that's now our first community currency that will be built on our network. Now, we'll have it both ways. People can use the stable coin if they want, or they can use TexitCoin if they want. There are obvious advantages and disadvantages to each one. But the idea is that with a local community stable coin, we can take the cash that backs it up and put it down the street at like a credit union where we know that it exists. I mean, ask yourself this question. Do you believe today that there's $144 billion of treasury notes and cash in a bank account backing up Tether? Very few people believe that. Even fewer people actually want to know if it's real or not, because the whole industry runs on Tether. And God forbid we find out that it's fake and there's no cash backing up the $150 billion of Tether. what a dark day that would be for crypto. But if you know that the guy that runs the local community bank is holding onto your cash and keeping it safe for you, then we can have that digital cash circulating around town, bouncing around 30, 40, 50 times from merchant to merchant before that money gets cashed out. And we get to do that at almost a 0% merchant service fee. Why do we give the banks 3% every time we swipe or tap or anything like that when we can just have the local guy down at the branch, keep the money safe for us, and we can trade back and forth all day long without having to pay somebody somewhere far, far away to just keep track of it? I mean, if you take $100 right now downtown, the merchant gets 97. If he spends that next door, the person gets 94.50. That money only has to move around 40, 50 times before it's gone. Completely gone. I mean, it's like playing poker, and like you got a bunch of guys sitting around the table, nobody comes, nobody goes. 12 hours later, where's all the money? Oh, the house, the rake took it away. It's gone. That's what the banks do. They've got all the money. And so a community currency that's based on a blockchain that's inexpensive and fast with that cash that backs up the community currency right down the street gives us now unparalleled transparency to an age-old idea that's designed to help support the local town. And so that's the first actual use case for a community, for the currency that we'll have built on top of the TXT blockchain. And that's phase 2. And now what's interesting about it here in McKinney is the largest downtown cultural district in the state of Texas. The leadership here in McKinney is on the state board of directors for the Texas Downtown Association, the TDA, that has 300 downtown cultural districts like the city of McKinney that are all looking at McKinney and saying, what do we do to help spur economic activity in our town? Oh, a community currency based on the TXT blockchain, the Made in Texas blockchain? Let's try it out. If I tried to do that with gold, silver, copper coins, it would take me years to try to roll out all the coins that I need to be successful there. With crypto, copy paste, we can roll out the next one in the next city, the next moment. And that is what we need to actually be successful in restoring honest money around the state.
So Bobby, just spell it out a little bit for people. So I'm in McKinney. I go to a downtown festival. I drop $100. I get an incentive for participating. Right? You broke that down a little bit last week. Just try and help them see it from the consumer standpoint. Like, how do you get it adopted? Because the previous model wasn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really where the rubber hits the road and the experience that I have with the fairs and festivals doing this already. So let's take a walk through it. You go to the big event, and unfortunately, you're going to be forced to download an app, right? You got to download the City of McKinney app in order to participate. Now, City of McKinney is just an example. We don't have it this far along. We were much further along with Gonzales. But Gonzales is a much smaller town that doesn't really have many big events like McKinney does. And so you download an app. The incentive for us in Gonzales was actually really great. We still are working on rolling out free Wi-Fi service for downtown Gonzales, which has almost no cellular reception downtown. And so now you roll into town, you pull out your phone, you connect to the free Wi-Fi that you can get only when you download and install the app. And inside of the app, they have the ability now to purchase the downtown tokens, right? Tap to pay goes through either a Google Wallet or an Apple Pay, and you get a 5% benefit as you buy in. So there's an incentive for the consumer to pick up a larger chunk, right? So you buy 100, you get 105 of the downtown digital dollars. You go around, you tap to pay, you scan to pay, you tap to pay. Comfortable, familiar features, just like what you would do with your phone, with anything else, or with your credit card. Merchants get it real time. It's instantaneous. They see the transactions confirmed and the sale is complete. Now, we have kind of two different versions of this. One is the fair and festival version. The other one is kind of like the normal course of business version. But if we're going through the fair and festival, we know that the next day, 90% of that cash is going to get redeemed and turned back into dollars, right? And so most of that money is going to leave town. The guys that show up in the food trucks and the traveling carnival, they pack up the next day and they're out on to the next event. So the thing that we're looking for from that, and we don't know exactly what the numbers are until we've had an opportunity to model it, and then even more so when we do it, is how much of that cash actually sticks around the next day. What we saw when we were doing the half-ounce copper tokens was something like 25%, and that was huge. What we're hoping for with this model, after specifically a fair festival, is 10%. And so if you take a look at the city of McKinney, for example, their events will draw an average of 100,000 people. They'll have an average spend there of $40 to $50 per person. So let's say that they bring in $4 million for their fair festival event. 90% of that's going to leave the next day. That still leaves $400,000 now sitting at the local bank that has yet to be traded and passed around the downtown businesses. That's a huge amount of cash. In fact, it's almost double what the city of McKinney does all year with the downtown dollars. And so our hope with the downtown digital dollars is we're able to do about 200 times the economic velocity with the digital dollars than they had with their traditional paper system that nobody knows about. It's extremely inconvenient and is rarely used. You know, most merchants that participate haven't seen any downtown dollars all year. So now we've got $400,000 left over that are there because the fair came, the fair went, but now we've got $400,000 that is probably sitting on somebody's phone unspent. And what that means is, like, you take your family to the fair, you buy as many funnel cakes and turkey legs as you can possibly handle, and then you're going to leave. Now, traditionally, when you've got like paper tickets, you say, well, these things are worthless. I'm going to throw them away. So I might as well buy an extra 6 turkey legs that I'm probably not going to eat. And then, you know, we use all of our tickets. Well, now, all of a sudden, because we can still spend the downtown digital dollars after the fair completes, we can come back next week to the pub, or we can go back next week to the coffee shop, or we can take the family to Sunday brunch at the restaurant. And so now we've got an app that gives you an alert, a push notification. You've got 20 digital dollars left over. Let's take them downtown. There's a special at the happy hour at the winery on Tuesday night. You know, now we can remarket to the people that still have coins and have them come back. Instead of uselessly spending them on funnel cakes, they can now take their family out to dinner. Oh, dinner is going to be $60. I only got 20. I'll add another 100. So I've got some more for next time. Right? So there's a continual flow of cash coming into that digital economy. Now, on the merchant side, you got the second part. The merchant's got 2 options. The merchant can either cash that out immediately and have a negative incentive of 10%, or they can kind of look at their money and say, all right, well, I need money to buy my raw materials. I got to pay the electric bill through the power company. I got this, this, and this. But I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to eat lunch downtown. I'm going to go to the coffee shop. I'll use my digital downtown dollars, my downtown digital dollars, to support the local community. And then I'll use my cash money for the things that I've got to buy from out of town. So what we don't know yet is how many merchants will immediately cash out, turn that, you know, digital dollar back into fiat currency and take it to Walmart, versus how many of those merchants are going to circulate that money, and then how many times that money is going to circulate before it ends up getting cashed out as well. If we can get that money to circulate 4 times, then it's now less expensive. Even with the 10% cash out fee, it's now, if you spread that cost across those 4 transactions, it's now less expensive than Visa, MasterCard. And we've got a win. The average number of times that a community currency is spent before it leaves the economy is 40 times. And so with crypto, because of the transparency that cryptocurrency gives us, we can track that money. Okay, where did it go? It started at the coffee shop. It went to the boutique. It went from the boutique to the bakery. The bakery took it over to this shop. You know, we can give people a little bit of a window on like the economic health of their town. You know, we were thinking maybe we can even gamify it a little bit. Coffee shop A is 9 times more likely to spend the money locally than cash it out than coffee shop B is. Well, where are you going to spend your money? Are you going to spend it at Starbucks, or are you going to spend it at the local coffee shop? You know, now if people want to vote with their wallet to support their town, we can give them real-time insight into which merchants are the greatest participants in the local community currency. I mean, it's cool stuff, man. It's cool stuff. The metrics that we have, the insight that we have is really unparalleled. Ultimately, the success of it is going to be based on the merchants understanding that the 10% negative incentive is a small price to pay to support the community. And if they don't cash out right away, it costs them nothing. There's no fee. We're not even giving up 3% to Visa, MasterCard. So we're just trying to shift a little bit the way they think about spending so that they take what small amount comes in the community currency and using that continuing to benefit to the continual benefit of the community. But what's really interesting is you've got something that's kind of traditionally a leftist type of ideology that has this great crossover into the world of cryptocurrency. So that's why it's very important for us to appeal to everybody. We all have to deal with each other. We're going to do it with money. And when we have money that's honest and isn't getting inflated or devalued by some external party, we can at least trade with each other and use something that's likely to continue supporting us. And if you need to cash out, you can. Oh, by the way, in the back of your wallet app, every time you top up, we put 1% of that into TXC. Why? Well, because you got to pay the fees to use the layer 2. And so that fee is TexitCoin. And so every time you do $100 cash in, you're going to buy $1 of TexitCoin. It's not a lot, but if you were buying $1 worth of Bitcoin when it was 50 cents, and then you got a little pop-up in your wallet, a year or two later saying your rewards count is waiting for you to use it. You've got $38,000 of rewards. Where are you going to go to spend them? We're not selling that as a virtue for this program, but it is kind of something that's there in the background, yet to be seen if it becomes, incredibly valuable. But like I said, that's what builds the use is what builds the value for the currency and for the network. And so, imagine you have 100,000 people coming to an event. They all buy $40 or $50 worth of tokens, probably 50 because we won't give them an option to buy 40. And each one of those people is going to get 50 cents worth of TexitCoin on any event that there's a fair or festival. That's $25,000 of demand for TexitCoin. You tell me where TexitCoin is going to go when there are 300 communities across the state that once or twice or 3 times a year are buying in $100 or $25,000 on any given weekend. Checkmate.
And one more thing, Bobby, I need you to just close the open loops here. So that money is sitting in the bank account. That all gets deposited there. I mean, that's usually getting loaned out and stuff. There's usually value being created there. You also no.
No, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you because the door was opening. Can you say it again one more time?
Just all that money when they swap from fiat to the downtown digital dollar, it's getting stored at the bank. Someone's making a shit ton of money on the Tether right now, for example.
Yeah.
So there's money to be made there, and then also the rest
and
of your
program. For us. By the way, that money's for me. That's for downtown digital dollars. The revenue model for us is to work off of the interest on that money. And so it's the onus of responsibility is on our shoulders to get economic participation. So we build up that store of value to pay out more and more interest to us.
And then also, you also in your regular business activities generate excess cash. So all that stuff combined, eventually, you've got a huge, let's call it the marketing budget. Just kind of show them how you see that scaling and kind of some of the ideas that you shared last week about where that's going.
Well, there's a lot of money, first of all. I haven't gotten deep into specifics yet with it, but I will eventually, because it's important for people to know, first that we're very, very healthy financially. Just building up the liquidity reserve that we were talking about is a big thing. Building up a hash power reserve is a big thing. Building up profit to pay staff to bring on more people. Our payroll is now $40,000 a week. And we're growing fast and we're financially healthy. Like, it's really cool. It's really easy to do a good job and to do the right thing when you're doing well. I can say that firsthand, working off $1 an ounce in the silver world. Like, it's hard to do the right thing when you're going broke every day. The same reason why the Bitcoin miners, have never been able to do it right, because you're not making any money. And so I put together this program, I would say after years and years and years of study and analysis and mentoring from people that have done it successfully or terribly. And we've got something that works and it's healthy and the finances are great. And like I said, I'll share more about it down the road. But as far as what you're talking about today, we have a budget. And I tell people we do three things with the money. We build the mine, we pay commissions, and we promote the coin. The exact numbers on that, 50% is for our comp plan. 10% is for building the mine, and 20% is for promotion. And so those are the exact numbers. Those are the exact budgeted numbers. Now, you can look at the revenue and commission split real time, or it's like the end of last week. I don't have my computer up, so I can't tell you exactly what it was, but we did $617,000 in revenue last week. I don't remember, but I think our commission was something like $250,000. And so you can look at that and see firsthand that $250,000 is not 50% of 617. 308 would be 50%. So we're $58,000 under budget on just the comp plan itself, right? So that's extra money that just sticks around the company for us to use for the furtherment of TexitCoin. It's kind of what I was talking about a minute ago about us being very financially healthy. We're very good. Now, going one step further, 20% is earmarked for promotion. Last week, we did $617,000. 20% of $617,000 is $154,000. Is that right? 60,000, 10%? I don't know. It's a lot. Anybody got a calculator?
It's close
So
enough.
this week, I have to spend like $120,000 on promotion and marketing. Like, what other ideas can I come up with to promote and market us? We're on billboards across the state of Texas. We're on 3 radio stations. We're on online streaming as much as we can possibly saturate. We're live in the Austin airport. We're scheduled to go live in Dallas, Fort Worth. There's a lot that we're doing. We can do a lot more, but I need good, clever ideas on how to put that money to use that accomplishes what I want to focus on right now, which is saturation inside of the state of Texas. Right? Like, I'm not going to Asia yet with that marketing budget trying to get our friends over on the other side of the world to buy TexitCoin. Why? Because our market's too small today. Because any Asian whale could come in, put $100,000 into this thing and drive it to $5, and then the party's over, right? And it's just beginning on a new level, but the initial, building of the foundation of this thing is gonna be gone. And so, what I want is in the next 2 months, I want every person in the state of Texas to know what TexitCoin is. And so that's the primary focus right now of that marketing budget. But that's what it is. The 10% goes to our company overhead, salaries and payrolls, like I just mentioned. Payroll last week's 40 grand. So there's money left over there. And that leftover money, just incidentally, is my profit. Thank you very much. And the final 10% goes into liquidity. And so that's what divides up the money that comes in. So we have the ability to do and further all of our things just with the money that comes in from building the mine. So like when we're out there buying billboards and paying for radio ads, we're not selling TexitCoin to cover the costs on that stuff. That's all cash from what we've crowdsourced through our mine building initiative. And that's one of a kind. Like, you won't see any other network that's out there dumping 20% of its total revenue into advertising, so that the guys that are out there trying to build a mine have an easier time building the mine. Everything right now is working. There's not a single thing we've done that has not worked at least well. And so it's this self-reinforcing cycle that we're like stuck in, for lack of a better way of describing it, that just keeps pouring more and more and more cash and resources into this thing. When this ship is built, there's not a single thing that we can't do to promote TexitCoin. You want a Super Bowl ad for $8 million? Okay. You want to fly a blimp over every NFL game across the country? Okay. You want to sponsor a Formula One team? Sure. Like, what can't you do with a $200 million budget? It's nonsensical. But that's why it's so important for us to actually have real world use and application for our project. Because 16 is not the goal. 16 was like the believable milestone pit stop on the moon as we venture off to wherever's next. But there's no sense in bringing in $1 billion and only being worth $1 billion. Like, we want to be worth 5 or 10 or 100x. And that's what puts us up in the top 5. There's no reason why we would bring in $1 billion and only be worth $1 billion. But again, it's that, like, really? If we're going for top 5, it's big money. for all of us. For all of us. You know, there's not a single person that loses as we take this journey beyond. I don't remember your question. Does that answer your question? Did it kind of answer your question? Was it useful in any way? You were asking something about money and budgets, and I feel like I got off on a tangent.
And it's great. I just want people to catch your vision of where this is going, because those numbers that you're talking about, that's already baked into the plan. I think that's what people need to understand.
Yeah, the biggest thing that you have to wrestle with when you hear these numbers is you got to remember that we're talking inside of this crypto realm. And the crypto realm is strange and fantastical. You know, if you and I were to sit down and talk about buying houses, foreclosed houses, and, you know, fixing them up and flipping them, and we were going to like 10,000 XR money, you'd be like, whoa, bro. That's not realistic. Maybe we'll make 10%, 25% if we do a really good job, but come on. Crypto is the only class of investments where you can talk about 100 or 1,000 or a 10,000x return and not get laughed at. I mean, there's so much money out there. There's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars out there that every day is trying to find a new home, right? There's trillions of dollars in warehouses in China that wants to leave China, and they're just looking for a vehicle. You know, you give them something plausible, believable, reputable, they're in, to the tune of hundreds of millions or billions and billions of dollars easily. And so the money is out there. The only question is, how much of it are we going to get our hands on? Like, how do we do that? Do we have what it takes to continue growing, to keep this cycle that we've got, this machine turning bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where we take our spot in the top 5? And I look at it and I go, why not? I know all the dots. I can connect all the dots. The math is so simple. But then it just sounds so far-fetched and impossible. You go, it's crypto. It's far-fetched. It's impossible. But all of a sudden, this industry that didn't exist before 2008 is now a $3, $4, $5 trillion industry. Why not? Why can't we have ours? We've been leaders in this thing, you know, this money movement for years. The only thing that the guys that tried to do this from the money movement side did wrong was they tried to tie it to gold and silver. You know, when I first started this, everyone's like, be sure to back it up with silver coins. Make sure that it's backed by gold. Like, those things never work. Why not? There are some that are out there and they're, you know, moderately successful, but they don't work on a grand scale, because the majority of reasons why people are willing to get into the strange and scammy and risky, volatile worlds of cryptocurrency is because they have an opportunity to get rich. No one's getting rich off of gold and silver. You know, if you get into silver at 10 and it goes to 50, you 5x. That's big. You know, but people aren't getting into silver hoping that it goes from $30 to like $300,000. But a lot of people will take that leap of faith if you give them a hint of 100x or 1,000x or a 10,000x return. Fortunately, that's what happens in crypto. And it's not like it only happened once. No. It's happened hundreds of times. It happens every day. You can go on the web and you can find some new coin today that 100x'd. You know, so it's like, okay, well, it's going to happen. It's going to happen again and again. Which one's next? TexitCoin is next. How do you know? Because I'm running it. And I'm always successful at the things that I do. And now I've got 3,500 people on the rocket with me that wanted to win as well. Before it was just me. Now I got a whole community full of people that are excited about this thing winning and are going out there and spreading the message of sound money. I've never had this before. This has never happened. This is unbelievable to me. Why? Because we took the best of a lot of terrible things, we put them all together, and we got something great. And that great thing is called TexitCoin.
I love it. Yeah. Well, Bobby, I can't in good conscience keep you any longer. I know you got other commitments, but this has been fantastic conversation. Mike, do you have any thoughts or questions on your mind?
Guys, I need the hard questions. This is all softball stuff. Someone's got a question out there.
We will get them.
Be dealt with. Let's make a video about it. Bring it on. There's no topic off limits. I'll get into every part of it. I will always have a conversation anytime with anybody that's respectful and courteous. You want to dig up my dirty laundry from the past? Let's go. If we're going to find the Achilles heel on this thing, let's find it now. Let's get it out of the way.
The
You
only
know
thing I
what we
would
can
say-
do? Let me jump in here, Terry, real quick. What we can do is maybe what we'll do is we'll isolate certain topics and interview specifically on those so that we can easily segment this. Because this was like fantastic. Obviously, it's the most detailed thing I've ever heard really in the crypto space. Terry would not shut up about how fired up he was in a good way. The last call you guys had, and because a lot of this is like drinking out of a fire hose with a lot of people. So what we're going to do, and there's nothing wrong with it. Some people just can't handle that kind of overwhelm, and a confused mind does nothing.
It is a lot.
You just gave, but the thing is everything you gave us was golds. Don't think twice about the delivery of what you just said. We had to get this out here, and I will splinter this up. But maybe what we can do down the road is if you want to think of something that you're fired up about, a specific thing, we'll hammer just that point, have that specific video. The next thing you think of, we'll hammer that next video. Like, hey, this is the case study we're doing in McKinney, Texas. This is why this town is going to explode financially. This is where the coin's going. This case study is now going to be replicated in 500 other cities across the country.
Yeah.
We could do a video like that and pop these out, and people, it's going to blow people's minds.
Well, that's a good point as well. Not to cut you off there, but we're building the network in Texas. The coin works anywhere. People can trade it anywhere they see an opportunity to create value for their community. We had a lot of community currencies back in the day in Colorado, in Oregon, and Washington State. So I'm sure that those people would much rather build on the Made in USA blockchain than something else. So I'm absolutely positive that once this foundation is set, solidified, and we put the tools out there that people all over the country can use to replicate and to bring wealth back into their towns, we'll see it spread way outside of Texas.
Two quick things, Bobby. You mentioned hard questions. One is this is not a far out thing. You're almost done with this app and those agreements with those cities to go and do this. And two, if you do succeed in getting millions of users, you can modify the blockchain code on an as needed basis so it can scale. So the transactions are almost instant and almost at zero cost. I know people have that. We talked about that last week, but a lot of people were asking that.
Yeah. So two things there. First, we actually had a little bit of a setback maybe in the community currency discussion because Mayor Steve out of Gonzales just got voted out of office on Saturday.
Oh,
Mayor Steve, what happened? He was our local champion that was really helping get things going in Gonzales, and we're already connected with the next mayor. But political changes like that happen, and that's why it's important for us to work through the front door, the back door, and the side door, as I call it. The front door is going through the mayor, the city council, the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Corporation, the official leadership of the municipality that's designated to help promote local economic activity. That's what we would call the front door. And so McKinney, we're in the front door, and that's great, but that could change anytime, any place. We don't know whether that's because a new political party is voted in or because the winds change as they often do in politics. Like, that's one angle. The second angle is the back door, and the back door is through the community participants. We're having conversations now over lunch or coffee in McKinney with merchants saying, well, can I start right now? I'm ready to go. Do you want to pay today with it? And we're like, no. We're not ready yet. But the fact that a consumer goes in and offers to pay in an alternative currency, the same way that I did it back in the day, with the silver coins. So that's what we think of as the back door. And then the side door is through the merchants and businesses. The merchants have their own associations. Maybe that's the Chamber of Commerce as well. But you can go directly to the merchants through a Yelp or a Groupon like sales pitch and say, hey, we've got a new initiative that's designed to bring you more business that you wouldn't normally have, and it's based on this community currency. And then businesses usually love it. Businesses pay a premium to be on the square because they want to participate in the community aspect of the town, right? If you don't care about that stuff, you go park yourself way outside of town where people have to drive and come and see you. So we've got 3 points of entry in the community conversation. And so it doesn't matter if it's a big town or a small town. It doesn't matter if we're going through the front, the side, or the back. We know how to engage those things. And then the Hail Mary is the fairs and festivals. That's the biggest opportunity of all, and the most accessible, because they organize a totally different way outside of the political spectrum. And so the community currency thing is happening. It's really just waiting today on technology. We finished the layer 2. We've got some things that are causing us to take a step back and rethink some of our strategy on the layer 2. Just to throw it out there, we've got 3 different code bases: ordinals, runes, and omnilight that we have been working with to build a layer 2. They all do something a little bit different, some advantages, some disadvantages. We got it done the really hard way, but now we're taking a look and saying, okay, we have to build something not just for ourselves, but we also have to build an API that we can publish out there so that anybody can come along and say, oh, I want to build on the TXT blockchain as well. Let me have the tools. So we did it the hard way, and now we're looking at it and saying, maybe we should circle back around and do it the easy way as well, so that others can engage it more quickly than having to go through a full code development. So that's what's happening right now with the community currency. So the community currency is a go. It's not dependent. I mean, everything that we need for TexitCoin to be successful, we've got in our own hands. There's not one external thing that we need, save for the world to continue spinning and the power to stay on and the internet to stay up. Like, we need those things. They're not in our control, but if they keep going the way they've gone for the last couple thousand years, we're going to be just fine. Second part of your question was about
just scalability of the blockchain itself, speed, transaction time,
yes.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So in that conversation, we get into some wrestling with the concept of decentralization and the fallacy that Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, TexitCoin are purely democratic, driven by the people for the people, and that's not entirely true. In any of those cases, you've always got a handful of people, whether they're core developers or they're miners or they are exchanges. You've always got a small handful of people that are in a position to guide or control the cryptocurrency. And I would argue that you kind of want that to a certain extent so that the mob doesn't get control and take it in a direction that it's not supposed to go. However, you would really hope that the person or people or group that are in a position to nudge the project in a particular direction are committed to the ideals of the mission. And so I can't think of a more congruent team than what we have to that end. And just go back and watch my congressional testimony from 2012 if you're in any way concerned about whether or not that's true. But the point is that, yes, we have the ability to modify the code if and when the needs of the marketplace dictate that we've got to make a change or an improvement in order for the currency to continue to be usable. This is exactly what happened in the case of Roger Ver and Bitcoin Cash back in 2017. Roger Ver is looking at transaction times and transaction costs going through the roof. I mean, I remember in 2017, it costing $50 in transaction fees to send Bitcoin. It was so expensive and so slow. My first Bitcoin transaction ever timed out. 24 hours later, it still didn't go through, rejected back to my wallet. I'm like, this isn't a usable currency. This is totally stupid. He saw that same problem, and Roger Ver split it off and launched Bitcoin Cash. And Bitcoin Cash was, of course, the faster, cheaper version of Bitcoin. I think he named it kind of deceptively similar. That was not his greatest moment, in my opinion. But the concept was good. And I don't think that there's been an advocate for honest money as good as Roger Ver. And he checked out. He's made his money. He's moved on. And so, again, that's kind of the leadership void that we've got in crypto, where people are looking at it and saying, hey, we've got this great technology. The technology can be improved over time to, really keep pace with Visa, MasterCard in terms of transactions per second. And we need somebody that's committed to that, that's not owned by the miners. It's really the miners that rejected the block size change because they're making a fortune off of, transaction fees. I don't know exactly what the split of the numbers is between block reward and transaction fee reward for the mining community, but they're getting rich off of that. And so, they've got a vested interest in keeping the system exactly the way it is. And because of that, Bitcoin's turned into digital gold. So it's not really a usable currency. So yeah, we're watching all that stuff. We have the ability to improve all those things. We don't have a community of miners right now that are saying, don't change the transaction times. We're getting rich off transaction fees. And if we ever had to get to that point and we were getting rich off transaction fees, I would eloquently and passionately speak as to why we needed to grow and improve and try to win over the community and and see it improve so that we can continue to be leaders in the realm of alternative currency.
The Bitcoin redo. We're going back to the first line of the light paper, peer-to-peer digital cash. I love it.
That's right.
All right, Bobby, I know you got some evening plans. Go enjoy your time with your wife and your family. Thank you so much for coming on once again. I do hope to get you on more of these, but this has been fantastic. So I'm out. Thank you very much. Mike, any final thoughts?
No, this was fantastic. If you don't mind, Bobby, just stay right there after I end the stream, just to thank you again privately.
Will do.
Stuff like that. But
yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Sorry about my technical limitations here as we got started, but I think we worked through them pretty well.
Yeah, you came out great. So everybody just know that this link is active. As soon as I hang up on here, you guys can share the same link, and we will also have an edited version. I'll pull some pieces out of here you guys can share. So thank you guys for being on here. I'm going to end the stream. You guys just stay right there. We'll be good. Peace out.
Thanks.